Let me start my timer. So, in the interest of time, let me be the first panelist to say I would like to respectfully observe our protocols established by our moderator. And let me jump into rocking this boat a little. As the moderator mentioned, I am, as of last night, the president of the Caribbean Youth Environment Network in Guyana. We are a youth and environment network that spans several countries throughout the Caribbean region who focus on issues not only related to environment but also related to youth and youth development. Now, I coined this phrase when I wrote this afternoon, as a springier spring chicken back in 2014, I refuse to believe that I'm approaching 30 and I am no longer legally defined as a youth, right? So back in 2014, myself and 3 other Guyanese youth delivered a declaration to the 44th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. Now, this declaration was titled Empowering Youth to Take Action on Climate Change. The declaration stated, and I quote, "As vulnerable small island developing states, it is imperative that we be involved in all aspects of deliberation, consultations, negotiations, and policy making that address the importance of sustainable development to our future as Guyanese and Caribbean youth. We recognize that we are faced with challenges such as a lack of adequate representation at all levels and vulnerability to flooding and other climate-related disasters, a lack of awareness in relation to youth-related actions that are needed to adapt and mitigate the actions of climate change, and a lack of engagement with policymakers. We further called on the governments and the representatives there that we want governments to promote and incentivize the use of clean, green, and sustainable technologies, translate existing policies into community-based actions, facilitate behavioral change through the implementation of stronger educational and awareness-based environmental activities, provide resources to vulnerable communities with minority groups, particularly those in urban communities, people with disabilities, and hinterland youth, to encourage innovation and creativity in adapting to climate change." End of quote. Today, approaching 4 years later, much of this call is still resounding. Several other calls, such as CYN's own Caribbean We Want declaration, still reverberates within many walls. The call still remains one for adequate representation and involvement in the shaping of policies that we will have to live with as the future of our countries. Questions are still asked about our fit and properness, about faking of experience when most of the time we're not afforded the opportunity to gain that experience. Today, 4 years later on, there are still many things that need to change with respect to youth and youth representation in climate issues. However, all is not lost. There has been progress. I note some developments, such as recently the Ministry of Natural Resources had launched the Youth in Natural Resources Mentorship Program. There was 4 Guyanese young people in secondary schools participating in the Youth Climate Change Conference in 2017, this year, with support from the United Nations Development Program, as well as our own Office of Climate Change. I also note that as of this month, CYN was invited by the Department of Environment to be a member on the multi-stakeholder expert group that was established as the guiding group and the advisory group towards the elaboration of the Green Development State Strategy. We were invited to sit in thematic areas of sustainable management of natural resources and human development and well-being. And the fact that we have 2, and maybe we'll come down to Gardner as a half, young people on this panel tonight. So there are changes happening, but they're just not happening enough. Young people have the drive, the energy, the innovative minds needed to advance our country's mitigation and adaptation measures. Given the right space to operate, given the support to operate in that space, always gives outcomes that are phenomenal. Something popped up across my Facebook timeline last night. There was a young man who is under 25 from St. Lucia. As we might all be aware, the issue of sargassum and sargassum seaweed has started to be a bone in Caribbean countries, particularly those that are tourist-based, because the sargassum seaweed and the smell of the methane and the egg is very detrimental to tourism. There was a young man in St. Lucia, Johannes Dujon, who decided I can do something about this. And he formulated a company, Algas Organics, where he's going to take this seaweed and he's going to use them as a range of natural fertilizers for development and stimulating plant growth through vigorous root development in the agriculture sector. He further wants to diverge into other sectors of agriculture and use this problem as something that can be very beneficial. So in his innovativeness, he did not see only the issue, he saw the opportunity, and he was afforded the space and the support to develop that into a venture that can not only benefit himself, but also other young people. Now, with the advent of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, the role of young people is clear. According to UNEP, over a third of the 169 Sustainable Development Goal targets highlight the role of young people and the importance of their empowerment, participation, and well-being. And 20 targets across 6 SDGs are strongly focused on youth. Those SDGs are those of zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, decent work, economic growth, reduced inequalities, and climate action. So the 2030 Agenda acknowledges that for us to move forward, we have to move forward not only with the old men in gray suits, but also with the young spring chickens like myself. Apart from engaging and enabling us, if we realize that young people, in terms of consumption, in terms of technology, we are probably the largest market base of consumers in the world, and we will remain to be that particular sector of consumers. So when it comes to things like sustainable consumption and use of energy and climate mitigation efforts, the real drivers are going to be the young people. So this entire talk is captured on the heading, Guyana's Imperative for Prospering in a Climate-Altered World. So the question is, what is Guyana's imperative for prospering in a climate-altered world? For me, it is the imperative that young people are given meaningful roles of being involved in all aspects of deliberations, consultations, negotiations, and policy making that address the importance of sustainable development. It is imperative that we see a proliferation of young, energetic, and innovative minds on decision-making bodies. The development of programs that will see youth gaining experience. Let's have somebody understudy Dr. Bynoe when she goes to bond. Let's have people accredited to our COP representation in the United Nations framework. Let's have somebody understudy Rear Admiral Best. When they leave, somebody needs to take that role. So we have an imperative to ensure that young people gain experience in the global, regional, and local climate change and sustainable development negotiations. It is imperative that we ensure the engagement of youth, and I want you to note this range. It is imperative that we ensure the engagement of youth from Port Morant to Port Kaituma, from Alboystown to Alness. And I'm specifically using those names because we need to take the talk out of the academic circle and into the ground. We need to visit communities and we need to engage with people from Alboystown, from Alness, from Port Morant, Blackbush, Port Kaituma. Because at the end of the day, 40 years from today, 20 years from today, the reality is young people now are going to be the ones who will be here. Thank you.